Well, we are now in the season of Epiphany. Christmas is over, although my decorations are still waiting to get back into their boxes. I don't know about anybody else here. No judgment. They'll get there. But winter has arrived. Yesterday, my 4-year-old grandson asked me, "Nana, why are all the trees dead?" So we had a lovely conversation about how the different seasons come and go and how the trees rest in the cold winter months. And then they'll be ready for spring and the beautiful leaves will come back. So for us as well as for the trees, winter is a time for slowing down a little bit. We're forced to let the weather lead the way in deciding how much we can accomplish. And I think in our production-driven culture, maybe we need some of that, something to slow us down. And as we take a breath, as we slow down a little bit, it's also a good time to reflect on where we experience the presence of God in the world, how we can listen for our calling to find our purpose for this stage of our life, whatever stage that is this year. So Epiphany is about opening ourselves to what God is doing, what's happening around us, and being open to look maybe more closely at what's happening inside of us. And our focus this season is on a physical spirituality, as we recognize that our spirituality is intrinsically connected to our physical experience in this world and in this life. And both of the stories that we read this morning include dreams or dreaming. And we have a tendency to think of dreams as something that's sort of ethereal, that's separate from our physical existence. But dreaming is actually a physical experience. It's a process that takes place in our brains. Researchers who've been studying dreams now begin to understand that dreaming is an example of an embodied presence. We know based on years of studies that while we sleep, the brain is constantly working, processing our memories from the day that's just passed, incorporating that into our other memories. And as the brain produces dreams, there are bodily sensations that are incorporated into those dreams. And if we talk about how we use the word dream, we realize there are two types of dreams. There are those dreams that you have when you're sleeping, and the dreams that are visions and hopes of the future that could be. And even our dictionary definition includes both of these. A dream is a series of thoughts or images and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. And a dream can be a cherished aspiration, an ambition, an ideal. And I think we see each of these types of dreams described in the stories that we have read this morning. In our Old Testament story, Samuel is around a 12-year-old boy, and he's working in the temple, and he's assisting the elderly priest, Eli. And as the story goes, Samuel was asleep when he hears a voice calling his name, and maybe he was in that REM stage of sleep, just alert enough to be awakened by this voice, but makes a very logical assumption that it's Eli calling him, and he runs to him, says, "What are you looking for? What do you need?" And Eli's asleep and says, "I didn't call you, go back to bed." And he does this, as we shared, 2 more times, and then Eli begins to understand that this is more than just another ordinary dream. Tells him, "Give it 1 more time, and if you hear that voice again, then respond to it and say, 'Lord, your servant is listening.'" There was a message to be found in this experience of dreaming as his brain was processing those thoughts and emotions. And this particular dream led to a new stage of life opening up for Samuel, as Eli understood this calling on his life and allowed him to take on leadership roles he wasn't expecting, certainly at a young age. Now, our second story, centuries apart from the first one, but this sort of deals with that second type of dream, a dream that is shared through relationships and conversations. As Jesus is beginning his ministry, he finds Philip and invites him to become a follower in this new work, this work of teaching and healing, with the aspirational dream of bringing God's realm of love on earth as it is in heaven. And Philip is excited about this dream, this vision of participating with God and changing the world. And so he comes looking for his friend Nathanael and is sharing this offer. We have found the one about whom Moses and the law and the prophets wrote. It's Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth. Nathanael is skeptical and responds, really, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Philip, who was inspired by this vision, is still inspired. So he says, let's find out. Just come and let's see. I don't think Nathanael was closed off. He just had some preconceived notions, some prejudices to overcome. This was going to require some relationship building, some conversation, some openness on Jesus' part to reach out to this skeptic. Jesus saw the good in him and offered not judgment but affirmation, and came to him saying, I know you are truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. You are honest. And surprised and taken aback, Nathanael asks him, how do you even know me? Jesus answers, I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you. And this is one of those stories where understanding context is really important in understanding the story, because under the fig tree was where students went to continue their discussions after they left the temple. It was a catchphrase for the place eager disciples gathered, and Jesus had been observing them and observing Nathanael and knew that he was open to what God was doing and new ideas that might be coming into their lives. So I think we can all relate to Nathanael. He was hopeful and he was skeptical. And we've been burned before by false hopes and false starts, but we don't want to give up. And we need a vision. We need a dream of a better world. And I know that for many of us as activists, we have a tendency to focus on the problems that need to be fixed, and that's where our thoughts keep going. But if we don't want to burn out, we may need to keep our focus on the dream, on that future that we hope to be a part of creating. Jesus spent his life trying to keep his followers focused on God's vision of a just and loving world where all people are treated equally beloved children of God. We continue to learn from Jesus and from those in the past who have followed his way. And this week, of course, remembering and learning from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is known as a civil rights leader, an activist, as a public speaker. But some of you know I like to remind everybody that first, before all of those things, he was a Baptist minister. And the church was a central part of his formative years. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. grew up surrounded by people of faith, people who lived out the scripture's call to seek justice. He went on to study at Morehouse College and Boston University, and through all those years, he was committed to the God found in the life and teachings of Jesus and the prophets. Dr. King believed deeply that God's unconditional agape love is the first law of the universe. He explained what he meant by this, saying that agape is love seeking to preserve and create community. And agape is a willingness to go to any length to restore community, a willingness to forgive, not 7 times, but 70 times 70, in order to restore community. He believed that we live in a moral universe created by this just and loving God, but justice doesn't occur in human existence without the concerted and persistent cooperation of God's people. Now, in his 1963 speech, he encapsulates the importance of these aspirational dreams of participating in God's liberating work in the world. He spoke to those who were already weary from the struggle, saying, "You have been the veterans of creative suffering, but let us not wallow in the valley of despair. For I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, all people, created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at a table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering in the heat of injustice and the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discord of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Much good has happened in the years since that speech. Much has changed, and there is so much more that needs to change for that dream to be fulfilled. But that dream is still alive. And Martin Luther King Jr. showed us how to follow the way of the prophets and the way of Jesus in seeking to bring about that change, always through nonviolent action. He approached nonviolence as a spiritual discipline, believing that before we try to transform the external circumstances, we need to transform the hearts and the minds and the spirits of ourselves, those who seek to be agents of change. Now, we've looked at his 10 commandments of nonviolent action before, and I feel like this holiday is always a good time for us to be reminded of these important practices that were a part of this work that is now a part of our history and a part of our future. So with Dr. King, if you were going to be a part of the movement of building God's beloved community, you would commit to following these spiritual practices. Number 1 is to meditate daily on the teaching and the life of Jesus. Number 2, remember always that a nonviolent movement seeks justice and reconciliation, not victory. Number 3 is to walk and talk in a manner of love, for God is love. Number 4, pray daily to be used by God in order that all people might be free. Number 5, to be ready to sacrifice personal wishes in order that all people might be free. Number 6, to observe with both friend and foe the ordinary rules of courtesy. And 7, seek to perform regular service for others and for the world. Number 8, refrain from the violence of fist, tongue, or heart. Number 9, strive to be in good spiritual and bodily health. And 10, always work together in community for community. So today's scriptures and the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. focus on paying attention, on being open to the voice of God and God's movement in the world and in our lives. For God is constantly communicating through insights, through encounters, through dreams, through the inspirational words and actions of those around us. And our calling is to listen to the many ways God communicates, often hidden in everyday experience, and then to follow that vision, that dream, to bring God's justice and loving kingdom more fully into this world each and every day. Together we will continue to do that. And now, Let's continue together to sing.